The morning bell echoed through Roosevelt Elementary as Dr. Maria Santos finished her coffee in the principal's office. 20 years in education had taught her to recognize trouble before it walked through her door. Today, trouble wore a county health inspector's badge. Inspector Bradley Knox entered with his partner, Thompson, both carrying clipboards and wearing expressions of manufactured authority. Maria had dealt with routine inspections before, but something felt different about these two men. Their eyes swept her office with predatory interest, lingering on the family photos of her adopted daughter, Elena, and the community service awards lining her walls. Routine health and safety inspection, Knox announced without preamble, though Maria hadn't received the required 48-hour notice. "We've had complaints about this facility." Maria stood, smoothing her navy blazer. "Of course, gentlemen. Though I should mention, we passed our last inspection with flying colors just 3 months ago. All our certifications are current." Knox exchanged a glance with Thompson. "Things change quickly in schools like these," he said, his tone carrying implications that made Maria's jaw tighten. Roosevelt Elementary served the predominantly Hispanic East Side community, where many families struggled economically but invested everything in their children's education. As they toured the building, Knox's nitpicking began. He criticized the lunch program for serving ethnic foods that might violate nutritional guidelines. He questioned whether the bilingual signs posted throughout the school met official English requirements. Thompson photographed every minor scuff on the walls, every slightly worn textbook. "Your student files seem irregular," Knox observed, flipping through attendance records in Maria's office. "Lot of absences. Makes you wonder what kind of home situations these kids come from." The casual prejudice in his voice made Maria's hands clench, but she maintained her professional composure. "Our students face unique challenges, Inspector. Many parents work multiple jobs. We pride ourselves on supporting families through difficult circumstances." Knox's smile was cold. "Support is one thing. Enabling is another. We'll need to review your disciplinary records, academic performance data, and financial expenditures." Over the following weeks, Knox and Thompson returned repeatedly, each visit more invasive than the last. They interviewed teachers, questioned students, and scrutinized every aspect of Maria's administration. Anonymous complaints began appearing on the district's website, alleging financial mismanagement and academic negligence. Maria knew she was being targeted, but proving it would require evidence she didn't yet have. The attacks escalated when local news ran a story suggesting Roosevelt Elementary was failing its students, complete with misleading statistics and unflattering photos of the school's aging building. The breaking point came during a surprise evening inspection. Maria was leaving a parent-teacher conference when Knox and Thompson cornered her in the parking lot. Elena, now 16, waited in the car nearby. "Pretty nice vehicle for a public school principal," Knox observed, eyeing Maria's modest sedan. "Makes you wonder where the extra income comes from. These community programs you run, lot of cash flowing through, isn't there?" The implication was clear and completely false. Maria ran after-school programs funded entirely through grants and donations, with every penny accounted for in public records. "I think this inspection is complete," Maria said firmly, moving toward her car. "Actually, we need to search your vehicle," Thompson interjected. Anonymous tip about stolen school supplies. Elena rolled down her window, her young face worried. "Mom, what's happening?" Knox leaned closer to the car. "Your daughter? Interesting. Wonder what immigration services would think about your family situation." The threat hung in the air like poison. Maria had adopted Elena legally years ago when the girl's grandmother, a school custodian, passed away. Every document was legitimate, but Knox's implication was clear: cooperate or face manufactured immigration troubles. That night, Maria sat in her home office, Elena sleeping upstairs, and began building her case. She reached out to longtime contacts in the district, gathered documentation of every inspection, and started connecting the dots. Her phone rang near midnight. "Dr. Santos? This is Carmen Rodriguez from Lincoln Middle School. I heard about your troubles. Same thing happened to us last year with Knox. We need to talk." The next morning brought another crisis. An anonymous complaint to Child Protective Services accused Maria of neglecting Elena. Social workers arrived at the school during lunch, questioning Elena in front of her classmates and searching their home that evening. Elena, mature beyond her years, answered every question with quiet dignity while Maria documented everything. The workers found nothing concerning, but the humiliation was intentional. Maria's assistant, Mrs. Chen, approached her the next day with a flash drive. "I've been keeping copies of everything," she whispered. "Every email, every report Knox filed. My nephew works in IT for the county. He says Knox has been filing similar complaints against 3 other schools." The pattern became clear. Knox systematically targeted schools serving minority communities, manufacturing violations to justify closure recommendations that would redirect funding to charter schools run by his political allies. Maria reached out to investigative journalist David Park, who had covered education corruption before. Together, they began mapping Knox's activities across the district. Parent volunteers, initially suspicious of media attention, gradually came forward with their own stories of harassment and intimidation. The evidence was damning. Knox had falsified inspection reports, backdated complaints, and coordinated with charter school operators to identify schools for closure. His pattern of targeting immigrant communities was unmistakable. The breakthrough came when Maria discovered Knox's computer logs showed he had been accessing confidential student records without authorization, searching for immigration status information to use as leverage against families. District Attorney Jennifer Walsh initially seemed reluctant to pursue the case. Knox had connections throughout the county government, and challenging him meant confronting a network of corruption that extended beyond the education system, but Maria persisted. She organized parents, teachers, and community leaders to demand accountability. They filled school board meetings, wrote letters to newspapers, and documented every instance of Knox's harassment. The tide turned when a brave whistleblower inside the health department came forward with internal emails showing Knox coordinating his inspections with charter school developers. The emails revealed a systematic scheme to manufacture school closure justifications. Judge Patricia Morales granted Maria's request for an emergency injunction, ordering Knox to cease all inspections pending investigation. Federal authorities opened their own inquiry into civil rights violations and corruption. Knox's carefully constructed facade crumbled quickly once the truth emerged. His resignation letter blamed political pressure and denied wrongdoing, but the evidence was overwhelming. Thompson, facing criminal charges, cooperated with investigators and revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. The community's response was immediate and powerful. Parents who had felt powerless against an intimidating bureaucracy now understood they had rights worth fighting for. They organized ongoing oversight committees to monitor future inspections and ensure transparency. Maria stood before a packed auditorium 6 months later, addressing the first annual Community Education Summit. Elena, now a senior planning to study education herself, sat in the front row with pride shining in her eyes. "We learned something important this year," Maria told the crowd. "When people try to use fear to control us, we have a choice. We can let that fear divide us, or we can stand together and demand better." The reforms that followed were comprehensive. New oversight procedures for school inspections, mandatory bias training for county officials, and community representation on education oversight boards. Knox's targeting scheme had inadvertently created a more engaged and empowered community. 3 charter schools lost their licenses when investigators discovered their connections to Knox's corruption. The funding returned to public schools, allowing Roosevelt Elementary to upgrade facilities and expand programs. A year later, Maria walked through halls filled with vibrant student artwork and heard the chatter of multiple languages that made her school a truly inclusive community. Knox's attempt to silence and marginalize had instead amplified voices that demanded justice. Elena graduated as valedictorian that spring, her speech focusing on the importance of standing up for vulnerable communities. She would attend college on a full scholarship, planning to return as an educator herself. In her office that final day of school, Maria reflected on the changes. The experience had been traumatic but ultimately transformative. A system designed to intimidate families had been exposed and reformed. Most importantly, a community had discovered its own power. The morning news played softly in the background, reporting on educational reforms spreading to other districts. What began as one principal's resistance to harassment had sparked a statewide movement for accountability and transparency in public education. Maria smiled, turning off the television and locking her office for summer break. Tomorrow would bring new cha.